as an entrepreneur, you wear a lot of hats, right? There's a lot of things that are on your plate, a lot of things you need to do, but there's one thing in particular that is just the most profitable thing you can work on. Like, it yields the best ROI based on the time you actually spend on it. And it doesn't really matter if you're just starting out, if you're just starting with your business, or if you already, like if you employ 100 people, for example, or even 1,000 for that matter. Like, it doesn't really matter. This one thing, I believe, is always going to be the best ROI. It's going to be the best time spent. Now, just in case we haven't met before, my name is Wilco the Kreij, and obviously you might have seen my Facebook ads, for example. Like, I run a lot of ads. So you might think, well, he's probably going to talk about Facebook ads. Or like, yes, I've created Facebook ads. I've created funnels that have been worth multiple seven figures for my business, but that's actually not the highest profitable thing I've done. Like, that's not where I get my best ROI. Yes, it's awesome. Yes, creating good funnels is great. Yes, all of that, right? But none of that really stacks up to this. So what's this? This is my iPad in this case. You can have a notebook as well. And it's all about strategic thinking time, right? And I know what you're thinking, like, yeah, we should think about what we do, where we get headed with our business. For many years, I have not spent, like, I've done that, right? I've been planning, I've been thinking, I've been strategically thinking about where I want to go, but I haven't spent enough time on actually thinking time. What do I mean with that? So for a lot of entrepreneurs, like, as soon as you have the answer, you just go running, right? But obviously, in our minds, we make up stories, and some of these stories are true, and some of them are definitely not true. They're just false, right? And because of that, we take action on the wrong things. Like, maybe you've seen a competitor do something, you're like, oh, that's awesome, I want to do that as well, and you start running. Or maybe you've seen a guru or a course, and like, hey, that's awesome. But oftentimes, it's just worth it to spend more time thinking, more time planning of what you actually want to do before you actually start executing. And so what I now do is, I don't just schedule in thinking time. That's the first thing I highly recommend you to do. Like, schedule it in your week, schedule time where you don't do anything and think, right? You're not producing, you're not working, but you're spending time thinking to make sure that what you're going to work afterwards, or if you have a team, what your team is going to work afterwards, has the best impact you can have, has the highest impact you can have to the place where you actually want to be. And usually, like, a lot of times people think they're doing that, right? And then they realize, like, they've been building this ladder, and they climb up the ladder, they climb the ladder, and it's awesome, it's going, and they're moving forward, and then they realize they actually had the ladder against the wrong wall, right? Like, it just didn't, it wasn't the right point, it wasn't the right place where they actually were going to, right? So that could have been prevented with more thinking time. Now, I have to admit, not every week I do it, but I try to spend a couple mornings. Mornings are, for me, my best time where I can think clearly, to just think, right? But it's not just about that. It's not just about, hey, all right, I'm going to think where I'm going to go and what my goals are. Like, the output of your thinking time, your brainstorming sessions, if you may call it like that, is only as good as the questions you ask yourself, right? Like, I purposely write down certain questions that I want to dive into. And when I have a question, I don't just, like, give an answer to that. I can spend an hour thinking about a certain question, because once you have a question, you start trying to answer it, and you keep thinking about it for quite a while, you start thinking about not just the first order consequence, but also the second order consequence. Like, if we do this, like, what impact does it have? Or what impact does that going to have? Or like, and that requires deep thinking. Like, for example, right now I'm actually I'm about to do a brainstorming session. That's why I'm outside. And I prefer to do it on my iPad. I use an app called Good Notes. Reason why I use an app and not my book, which I always used to do, obviously, is that I prefer this because I can just go back to all my notes, even though it's like a year ago, right? Like, I basically have it's all in the cloud. I can search for it. I can actually type words that will automatically recognize my handwriting. So that's why I use my iPad myself. But a notebook is just as good, right? And only thing I have with me if I do a brainstorming session is my iPad, a pen, and, well, maybe some coffee, right? And in this case, I'm actually holding my phone because I'm shooting this video for you. But normally my phone is not even in the area. I do have my AirPods on, so I can have some focus music going. And usually I'm in a different environment compared to where I usually work. Like, normally I work in my office, my home office. Right now I'm actually sitting in the garden because I want to be in that different setting, right? And normally I actually do this at a restaurant or a coffee shop, but obviously due to the whole COVID situation, have to roll with the option that we have, right? We have to go with the option that we were given. So, for example, today I wrote down very specific questions, and I'm going to spend time quite a bit of time on these questions. And again, what questions you have to ask really depend on where you're at. But for example, like I just want to remind myself the goal. So one of the questions I have is like, what is our goal and why? Because it's easy to say what's my goal, but like, why is that our goal? Because that makes you really think like, do we actually have the right goal, right? Or like where are we now, what we're going to be, right? A to B, point A is where we currently are, point B. That's pretty simple. But then what are all the obstacles that are in the way? Like, what are the obstacles that are in the way between A and B? Normally we think like, we want to do this and this, but what are actually the obstacles, right? Also, another question that I ask myself is like, what am I tolerating in my business that is sabotaging my results or that is incongruent with my standards, right? Because sometimes it's just easy to accept whatever is happening in your business, and it's just good to have an extra look. And I'm not just looking at that question of like, oh yeah, this, and this. I'll be like, I force myself to keep thinking about that problem or that question for like quite a while, because that's when there's all kind of stuff. And from that, there will be new questions, right? Like as I'm thinking about a certain question, there will be new questions that pop into my mind. I don't dive into those questions. I write them down, right? Because I want to solve this one thing first. Another question that I have, like where are the growth opportunities that I have been postponing because they require extra effort or outside my comfort zone? Because as an entrepreneur, as anyone, we self-sabotage, right? There's some things that maybe we do know that it might actually work, but we're not doing them because we don't like it, or like it's outside our comfort zone or whatever, right? And because of that, we tell stories of why it's not actually a great idea. We tell stories like, that's not going to work because this and this. But the reality is like, we're just scared of it, right? So I'm going to spend an hour like just thinking about like, what are the things that would actually work that I'm actually self-sabotaging, like that I'm just, they're outside my comfort zone. And my real point of this is that, by scheduling in these kind of brainstorming session or thinking time, as I call them, it's so powerful because you realize, like, first of all, you'll learn a lot about yourself, but you're able to create your business more clearly. You'll know, like, it's time well spent to spend hours on something like this, and then spend like time to actually implement the right thing, right? Because we all know, like, you can spend 100 hours on two different things, and one will give you 50% of your goal, and one will give you 300% of your goal, right? Like, but it depends on what are you actually doing. And usually we just go with what's inside a comfort zone, and usually the biggest growth doesn't happen inside your comfort zone, right? Like, if you're thinking about, hey, these are like cool incremental changes, like incremental improvements, that's not going to work, right? You want to look for exponential growth, because that's when the real magic happens, right? At least as if you want to grow your business fast. So without these thinking time sessions, I would not be able to grow my business as fast as I wanted to. Like, I need that time. So that's really what I wanted to share with all of you today, to make sure, like, if you have a business or you're starting a business or you already have a business, like, doesn't matter. Like, spend time, schedule in time to work, to brainstorm, to schedule in time, and not just like on and off, but like every week, schedule time to spend time without any distractions, write questions down, deep questions, and start thinking just about that, nothing else, just that, right? And that's where you'll get insane clarity, and you'll get insane, like, you'll create the vision of what you'll need to do to grow your business further. And yes, this is a little bit more vague, but it's so powerful. Again, I'm using my iPad. You can use it on any, a notepad. It doesn't really matter, right? As long as you spend time to think. That's what I wanted to share with all of you today, and hope you're all doing amazing.